Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So today we're talking about a few different cards trending on the market for several reasons. Of course, the ban list has started to warp the format just a little bit, as players have tried out different cards and techs over the last couple of weeks, but we also have Alliance Insight that's dropping really soon, and it is bringing a bunch of new cards that will definitely impact the meta. On top of that, we are getting revealed to us a bunch of cards from Duelist Advance in the OCG, which is the next core set coming after Alliance Insight. Tons of things happening right now, so we're going to cover some of the more notable price trends that we've seen recently. Let's get started. Kicking things off, let's take a look at Mulcharmy Purulia. So this is the first Mulcharmy that came out, and at first everyone thought that the card was okay, but they were really just waiting for Fuwalos. Now over time, Purulia became an increasingly viable side deck card. It's really strong against Raziel variants, as it can get you multiple draws since they do have their normal summon and a few ways to special summon from hand. It did see some main deck usage in Mermail since it is a water. For the most part, it was just a side deck option. However, going into this format, more players are experimenting with adding Purulia to the main board alongside Fuwalos because drawing cards is just so strong, and Purulia is probably the best Mulcharmy to have against Mitsurugi Raziel, which looks to be very popular with the new support from Alliance Insight. Now, this card did get an early reprint in Maze of the Master, where it was an Ultra and Collector's Rare. Here, we're just going to take a look at the lower, more accessible rarities. When Maze dropped, those Ultras were down at around $25. Everyone thought that the card was just going to completely tank in price. However, with the sudden surge in play that this card has seen, the Ultras have actually shot back up to around $50 each, much higher than people were expecting. Also, we have the original secret rares from the Infinite Forbidden. They had tanked down to about $30, $35. They've rebounded right back up to around the $60 mark as well. I think that Maze was kind of unfortunate because it came out right before Stampede, so we don't really have that much Maze being cracked open, and with less supply and more demand, the price of these variants has trended upwards quite a bit. We're not yet sure how exactly it is that Konami is going to approach reprint sets now, because we could get another set with a similar breakdown to Rarity Collection sets, but for now just know that this is going to be an expensive but probably necessary card if you're planning on playing any big events in the near future. Up next, we'll talk about arguably the least popular of the Mulcharmies, Mulcharmy Meowles. So this is the one that draws you a card when your opponent special summons from the graveyard or banish pile, which is admittedly a lot more situational than Purulia or Fuwalos. However, the card is still really good, which we really saw at the tail end of last format. It's an excellent side deck option against Malice, and we eventually saw basically 3 Meowles and 3 Lancia in every single sideboard. Now going into this upcoming format, Malice is arguably even stronger, with March Hare and the At Ignister cards from Alliance Insight being added to the mix, so Meowles is very likely to continue to be a popular side deck option. I have seen a few people experimenting with the card as an option in the main deck, though of course that's probably not what's going to be the most popular option. However, it is worth noting that the card is really good against Malice, Fire Kings. Sometimes it's okay against Blue Eyes. The other thing is that you can draw Meowles as a 6th card. You can drop it at the start of your turn, and then with cards like Maiden of White or GWCO6, you have the potential to draw cards on your own turn or limit the plays that your opponent can make, which is something that Purulia and Fuwalos aren't really able to do as well. Meowles is the newest of the Mulcharmies coming out in Supreme Darkness, and so it only has the one printing. This card was down at $40 to $45 for the secret rare, but with the card's increase in popularity recently, it has actually climbed up over the last few weeks to the $65 to $70 mark. Unfortunately, I don't really see this card being reprinted anytime soon. If anything, I think it could be in whatever Maze set we get at the beginning of next year, very similar to how Purulia was reprinted in Maze of the Master. Just like with Purulia as well, this might just be another card that's going to be expensive for the foreseeable future. Alright, next up we have Mitsurugi Ritual. So this is of course the ritual spell for the Mitsurugi theme. They are the newest TCG exclusive archetype, being a reptile ritual based strategy that works surprisingly well alongside the Raziel cards. Now early on last format, Mitsurugi Raziel seemed to be favored by a lot of players, but it fell out of favor as the format evolved due to some consistency issues. However, we got the second wave of Mitsurugi support in Alliance Insight revealed recently, and it's looking like it might just be enough to push the deck back to the top of the format. We won't get into the new cards here, but this card is one of the best ritual spells in the game, as you can either tribute from your hand or field to special summon the ritual monster from your deck, or tribute from the deck to special summon a ritual monster from your hand. Now, when Supreme Darkness first dropped, this card was actually one of the more expensive cards in the set, up at around $35, because Supreme Darkness, honestly, value-wise, wasn't really that great. With Mitsurugi Raziel falling off a bit, this card had also fallen to around the $18 to $20 mark. However, the card has seen an even bigger resurgence now, with the cheapest copies available on TCG Player now coming in at $45 to $50 each. Being another card from Supreme Darkness, I don't really see this card getting reprinted anytime soon unless it was like really early. Hopefully you did have a chance to pick this card up when the price had tanked if you were interested in playing the deck, because if Mitsurugi Raziel proves to be a top tier threat this upcoming format, I don't really see its price coming down anytime soon. So speaking of meta trends, the next card we have is Ally of Justice Cycle Reader. Now this card is actually a hand trap, but it's a very niche one that only sees play in really specific formats. The last time I remember this card being used was back in ABC format, where you would search for it with Gear Gigant X. Basically, this card is a double DD Crow, but it can only hit light monsters from the opponent's graveyard. Now, in the current format, this card can be really strong. Against Blue Eyes, you can hit Blue Eyes and Maiden of White, so they can't be summoned back. Against Raziel, you can hit Eclipse Twins and Detonator and really cut off a lot of their recursion. Against Fiendsmith, you can hit some combination of Requiem, Lacrima, and Engraver. And then, of course, because of Tom, I will mention ABC here, because you can banish the letters and stop them from accessing some of their boss monsters. In fact, this is a card that Dinkabui ran 3 copies of in the side deck with his Fire King list that he won the French Open with. Now with Cycle Reader, this card has a few different printings. The highest rarity is the old DT printing, coming in at $25 to $30 each. After that, the card has 2 super rare printings, one from Hidden Arsenal, and then a reprint in an OTS tournament pack. Either version is going to cost you around $10 each. Finally, the card got a common and then DT common printing in Hidden Arsenal Chapter 1. However, that set wasn't really open that much because it kind of sucked. Even those commons are going to cost you around $5 to $7. Given the prices, if you really do need to pick this card up, I think supers are probably going to be your best bet value-wise. Just do be aware that this is a card that sees play very rarely and in very specific formats, so if you are looking for a more budget option, you might be better off with something like DD Crow, which is slightly weaker right now, but is going to come up more often. Alright, so I thought this one was a troll post at first, but apparently this is an actual thing. We have Snowdust Giant. So this card is a rank 4 that requires 2 water monsters as material, and to be honest, its effect literally doesn't do anything. It places ice counters on monsters on the field, and then non-water monsters with ice counters lose attack points. However, this card is actually unironically seeing play in Mermail lists after the most recent ban list. Water decks lost both Bahamut Shark and Abyss Dweller, but they want to run a rank 4 water monster because they're able to overlay using Abyss Pike and Atlantean Dragoons, and they want to trigger Dragoon's effect to search when it is sent to the graveyard to activate the effect of a water monster. Unfortunately, with something like number 101 or 103, they require your opponent to have monsters on the field and conditions have to be met for you to activate their effects, but Snowdust Giant can basically be activated whenever, so it can be used going first as well. I think Mermail is really struggling this format, and this is just how players are kind of coping with the hits. Like, the dedicated Mermail player is probably going to still be able to do its thing if you're really skilled with it, but I just don't think it's going to be nearly as relevant as it was last format. Now, Snowdust Giant has never seen competitive play before, so it has just 1 rare printing from back in Abyss Rising. The card is just hard to find right now, so we're seeing it go from anywhere from $3 to $5 on TCG Player. This is just worth noting so that you can dig it up out of your bulk and try to offload it while it is getting some attention. On to the next one, let's talk about Vanquish Soul Razen. So the Vanquish Soul deck is a really cool one where the characters are based on these fighting games where you tag characters in and out. Razen is one of the best monsters for the deck, as you can normal summon it and search for any other Vanquish Soul monster. So in the 2024 tins, we saw Razen, Stake Your Soul, and Heavy Borger get reprinted, and those were the main expensive pieces of the deck. Of course, that led to other cards getting expensive, but then those expensive cards in Caesar Valius, Dr. Madlove, and Pantera also got reprinted in Quarter Century Stampede. So theoretically, the whole deck should be super cheap, but now players have gone back and bought up a bunch of copies of Razen. Of course, this is compounded by the fact that there's new Vanquish Soul support that was just revealed to be coming in Duelist Advance, and the new cards actually look really strong as well. The card was literally only $1 or $2 just a few months ago, but we're now seeing either the original Ultra Rare or the Secret Rare reprints coming in at $10 to $12 each. The deck probably isn't going to be meta relevant, but it's definitely a fun deck to bring to locals or to a regionals. If you opened the 2024 tins, this is a good card to go back and see if you pulled any copies of, since there will be a good amount of demand for it over the next few months leading up to the new support in Duelist Advance. And finally, the last card I want to touch on for today is Cyberse wicckid. So this card is a Link 2 that requires 2 Cyberse monsters to make. The main effect of it is that if a monster is summoned to a zone that this card points to, you can banish a Cyberse monster from your graveyard to add a Cyberse tuner from your deck to your hand. So of course this card is being used as an extra deck option in Malice. The new backup Adagnister is a Cyberse tuner that you can search for and summon out of your hand for free. It's a really strong new package that Malice builds all seem to be using from Alliance Insight. On top of that, wicckid does allow you to banish a Cyberse from your graveyard, so hopefully that is a Malice monster that you can special summon back to the field as well. Now, even though Malice did lose a bunch of consistency with hits to Dormouse, White Rabbit, and Underground, they actually gained a lot more than Ryziel did with the new Malice cards as well as the new Adagnister cards, and that's without mentioning the return of Mathmech Circular as well. Unfortunately, Cyberse wicckid only has one printing as a common from back in Savage Strike, and that came out all the way back in 2019. As a result, the card is actually annoyingly difficult to find, especially if you only started playing within the last couple of years. You probably don't have this card in your bulk. As a result, this card is consistently moving at $2 to $3 a piece. This is another card that you guys should probably try to look through in your bulk, except unlike Snowdust Giant, this is a card that's actually going to be meta relevant that you should be able to get some more consistent value from. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. We're definitely in kind of a weird state right now because we are just waiting for Alliance Insight, but of course once Alliance Insight drops, I believe we have YCS Providence like that weekend, so that's going to be a really big weekend because it's going to tell us what decks are actually going to be really strong this format. It's going to be our first big event with all of the new cards legal. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.